Hello, my name is Matthew Unzaletti, and I conducted my public opinion project on assisted suicide. Should it be a choice? So, to start off with, what is assisted suicide? So, this basically describes a process where lethal drugs will be administered by a medical professional to a terminally ill patient who made the conscious decision that they rather die than continue to survive through an illness that they will not survive from. And they make this decision mainly based on the pain that cannot be solved by modern medicine, and because if they're only given a short amount of time, they don't want to count down the months or the days. So it's a conscious decision that they make, and the lethal drugs are either administered by a liquid that the patient will drink, or it is administered through injection as well. And there was a lot of debate surrounding the subject from different religious groups and different political parties, as well as different demographics around the world. And the public opinion has shifted within recent years, and that's what we're going to look at today. So, some brief history behind assisted suicide and its push for legalization began in 1906, where a bill was drawn up in Ohio and presented to a judicial committee, but this was ultimately dismissed within a couple days, mainly because the committee felt it was immoral and unnatural for a person's right to choose. And this caused a little bit of outrage among those who did support assisted suicide, and this caused a group called the Euthanasia Society to form in 1938. And this group would picket and protest outside medical facilities, pushing for the person's right to choose that they rather die than try to continue to live through a terminal illness. And it wouldn't prove too successful because it did take 60 years for the first person to be allowed to go through the process of assisted suicide in the US. And this was on March 26th in 1998. And the patient was an 85-year-old woman in Oregon, and she was suffering from terminal breast cancer. But as public opinions shift and medical practices shift, assisted suicide will become a way more popular topic. So there is a lot of controversy surrounding this subject, and it is a big reason why it's still legal in most parts of the US as well as around the world. A lot of the individuals against assisted suicide feel that the pain can be alleviated somehow through modern medicine and its advancements. And a lot of medical professionals are against this as well because they feel it harms their own integrity, and they do experience guilt that they've had to take someone's life just because they've made a decision that they rather die instead of continuing to survive through a terminal illness. And a lot of religious affiliations are against assisted suicide as well, and they feel it is unnatural and not God's will. So, support for assisted suicide has shifted within recent years. When the first Gallup poll was introduced in 1947 for the legalization of assisted suicide, only 37% of Americans supported it. And within recent years, the most recent Gallup poll in 2018, it showed 72% of Americans supported assisted suicide. So that basically means 3 out of every 4 Americans support the right to choose. And just within 26 years between 1947 and 1973, support increased 18%. So just within that short amount of time frame, it did rise to more than half of Americans supporting the right to choose. And that's pretty astronomical within that short amount of time for more than half of America to support the right to choose. Even though it is still illegal in most parts of the United States, approval ratings and support is only growing based on the latest Gallup poll. So, how do certain age groups feel about assisted suicide? So, the most recent poll was conducted in 2013 by the Pew Research Center and found that millennials between the ages of 18 and 29, around 54% disapproved of assisted suicide. And that changed with those 30 to 49, they were around 47% disapproved. So almost around half approved of its practices. Same with 50 to 64, 51% approved of the practices as well. But as you got to 65 and older, around 56% of the individuals polled were against assisted suicide. So the relation is kind of the same between 18 and 29, as well as 65 plus, and the relation is close between 30 and 64. So Gallup News did a study in 2013 trying to find out which political party supported assisted suicide more and who supported it less. And they found that Democrats during 2013, around 60% of them supported the right to choose, while 41% of Republicans supported the right. And that's a huge drop off from 2001 when around 64% of Republicans supported it. So that's around 26% of a decrease within just 12 years. And within recent years, both parties remain consistent on how they're treading and how much they support assisted suicide and the right to choose surrounding the process. So, among the public, there are some media personalities and popular celebrities that do support assisted suicide. One of these individuals is Stephen Hawking, who was actually against assisted suicide up until a 2016 statement where he basically said that it is somebody's right to choose how they die if they're faced with a terminal illness. And another media personality includes actor Montel Williams, who has been outspoken about assisted suicide, and it should be somebody's right to choose. And a key advocate was Brittany Maynard, who was diagnosed with a terminal cancer and chose assisted suicide 6 years ago, and she passed away at 29 years old. And when asked about her decision, she replied with, "To have control of my own mind, to go with dignity is less terrifying. I feel this is far more humane." So, on the other side of the spectrum, there are advocates against assisted suicide. These individuals include Martin Sheen, who is Charlie Sheen's father, as well as an actor, politician Ron Paul, and disability advocate Alice Wong. And when Ron Paul was asked, should terminally ill patients be allowed to end their lives via assisted suicide, Ron Paul simply responded with no, and this was mainly due to his religious beliefs, and that is why he is against it today. Among medical professionals, assisted suicide isn't a popular topic and doesn't really have much support behind it. The most recent study was conducted in 1999, and euthanasia.com interviewed some cancer doctors and showed that support dropped nearly 20% within just 3 years advocating for assisted suicide. And it's very ironic because 70% of all assisted suicides around the world are on patients with cancer, and showing that around 20% of doctors are supporting assisted suicide show the huge difference between what type of patients need it and what type of doctors are conducting it and how they feel about assisted suicide as a whole. Among different religious beliefs, the support varies dramatically. So, with individuals who have no religious affiliation, around 81% of them support the right to choose for assisted suicide. And Islam is currently the least supportive, with just 1 in 4 supporting the choice. So, it's around 25% of all those practicing Islam will support the choice of assisted suicide. Jewish is around 69%, while Methodist is around 62%. Catholic is currently around 56%, so a little bit more than half. And Hindu is around 36%, and Baptist is also around 43%. Support for assisted suicide varies among ethnicities as well. A poll conducted in 2013 by Pew Forum showed that 44% of white adults did not approve of assisted suicide, while African American and Hispanic adults showed the same amount of disapproval at 65%, with only 32% of Hispanic adults supporting it and only 29% of African American adults supporting assisted suicide as well. Globally, the support for assisted suicide is growing, even though it's only currently legal in Germany, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and some parts of the US. But with increasing support among assisted suicide and the support for the right to choose, a lot of countries are experiencing a lot more citizens approving it and pushing towards full legalization. One of these countries is Belgium, with around 80% of its total citizens supporting it, but Russia is currently the lowest, with around 45% of its citizens promoting and supporting assisted suicide. And in the US, it's a small selection of the states where it is legal in. This consists of Washington, Oregon, Hawaii, Vermont, Montana, Maine, New Jersey, California, and in the District of Columbia as well. After analyzing all the data and looking at the information presented, I'm pretty confident that assisted suicide will become legal in the United States and some parts throughout the world. It is legal in some countries, but its widespread popularity and support is becoming more and more popular. And because of this, it will definitely reach some judicial branches and judicial committees as well. And as religious groups become more accepting of it and willing to talk about the topic of assisted suicide, it's only going to help with the popularity and it will change some stigmas around it. The only roadblock that might be in the way of it becoming totally legal is with medical professionals. It is against their integrity and it is against their number one goal for work is to save every patient. But with the option of a patient choosing to rather die than a medical professional helping them can definitely throw off a doctor's integrity and self confidence. So that will be a major roadblock. But with legal issues and it becoming illegal in the future, I believe it is a real possibility that assisted suicide will be legal in all 50 states. Main reason why I chose this topic is because I feel like if you're living with a terminal illness, it should be your right to choose if you want to go early. Living with a painful disease that you're not going to get well from, and it's pretty much decided what your fate is. If you do feel like dying would be better off than the situation you're in, then nobody should have anything to say to that.